Long before the cool hum of air conditioning filled American homes, summers were a very different experience. The heat could be downright brutal, especially in cities where brick buildings and paved streets trapped every ray of sunlight. Families had no choice but to get creative, finding clever, sometimes desperate ways to keep cool. It wasn't just about comfort, it was about survival. And yet, there's a certain charm when we look back. These strategies, whether they involve porches, fans, or simple meals, shaped the rhythms of everyday life. They brought families closer, forged community traditions, and created memories that many still carry today. So, let's turn back the clock and explore 11 shocking ways Americans beat the heat before air conditioning. 1. Sleeping on the porch. Before air conditioning, summer nights indoors could feel unbearable. The heavy, humid air seemed to stick to your skin, making even the thinnest sheet feel like a blanket of fire. So, many families dragged mattresses, cots, or even just blankets out onto the porch. Some porches were screened in, giving just enough protection from mosquitoes while letting in the slightest breeze. Neighbors would see each other doing the same, and entire blocks could look like outdoor campsites. Children fell asleep to the sound of crickets, while adults whispered under the glow of a streetlight. It wasn't glamorous, but in those quiet, breezy nights, there was a sense of togetherness you don't find today. 2. Hand fanning and funeral fans. If you ever stepped into a church before air conditioning, you probably remember the sight. Everyone waving small paper fans back and forth in perfect rhythm. These weren't just any fans. They were often printed with advertisements from local businesses or scripture passages handed out free to congregations. At home, people fanned themselves with whatever they could find: magazines, newspapers, or folded cardboard. The slow, steady swish of the fan became part of summer's soundtrack. It wasn't much relief, but in a time when options were limited, that little breeze could feel like a miracle. It was simple, it was old-fashioned, and it was a reminder of how resourceful people were when left with nothing but hot air and determination. 3. Shaded sleeping porches. Some houses in the early 20th century were built with sleeping porches. These were usually upstairs, surrounded by screens, and designed for summer nights. Elevated above the street, they caught passing breezes that made sleeping indoors more bearable. Families furnished these porches with simple beds, hammocks, or cots. Imagine drifting off to sleep under thin cotton sheets while hearing the distant sound of a train whistle or the rustling of trees. For many, it was less about escaping the heat and more about embracing a kind of summer ritual, one that blended practicality with romance. Today, those porches still exist on some old houses, though their purpose has long been forgotten. 4. Ice delivery and ice boxes. Before refrigerators became common, ice delivery was a lifeline. Big blocks of ice were hauled from wagons into ice boxes, keeping milk, butter, and meat cool for a few days. But ice wasn't just for food, it was also for people. Kids would chase down the delivery wagon, begging for small chips to suck on, treating them like candy. Families even placed bowls of ice in front of open windows or fans, hoping to cool the air as it passed over. It was an early version of air conditioning, though it melted quickly and left puddles on the floor. Still, that one block of ice could make the difference between unbearable and manageable. In a way, the Iceman brought more than food preservation, he delivered comfort. 5. Damp sheets and swamp coolers. In the hottest weeks of summer, families turned to water. One trick was to soak sheets in cold water, hang them in windows, and let the passing breeze cool the house as it evaporated. Others dampened towels and draped them over chairs, hoping for a quick escape from the heat. This worked much like an early swamp cooler, an evaporative system still used in some dry regions today. It wasn't perfect, the air became sticky and heavy, but for many, it provided enough relief to sleep through the night. Children would giggle as parents wrung out sheets, and even though it left the house damp, the coolness was worth it. It was messy, yes, but it was survival. 6. Cold basement retreats. For many families, the basement was the ultimate summer refuge. Built with stone or concrete walls and sunk into the earth, basements stayed surprisingly cool year-round. On the hottest days, families would gather downstairs to read, play cards, or simply escape the sun. Some families even set up makeshift bedrooms in the basement during heat waves. Kids camped out on the floor with blankets, while adults played board games by the dim glow of a single bulb. It was dark, sometimes musty, but it was blissfully cool. Many older Americans still remember spending long summer afternoons in the basement, the closest thing they had to central air. 7. Sprinklers and garden hoses. Long before backyard pools became common, sprinklers and garden hoses were the joy of summer. Parents would set up a sprinkler in the yard, and kids would spend hours racing back and forth through the water. The air filled with laughter and the smell of wet grass. Even something as simple as running through a hose was enough to cool overheated children. Adults joined in, too, sometimes washing cars or watering gardens just to sneak a spray of water for themselves. It was more than play, it was relief, and it made summer afternoons bearable. For many, those simple water games became some of the most cherished memories of childhood. 8. Cold suppers. No one wanted to turn on the oven during a heat wave. Instead, families turned to cold suppers, meals of sandwiches, salads, and fresh fruit that required no cooking at all. Sometimes a pitcher of lemonade or iced tea would be the centerpiece, with bowls of potato salad or sliced tomatoes on the side. These meals weren't just practical, they carried a kind of summertime magic. Kids loved them because they felt casual and different, almost like a picnic indoors. Cold suppers also gave families a chance to sit together without sweating over a hot stove. Even now, many people remember the taste of a cool tomato sandwich as the flavor of summer itself. 9. Attic fans and cross ventilation. Homes before air conditioning were built with airflow in mind. Tall windows, transoms above doors, and wide hallways allowed for cross-ventilation. At night, families opened windows on opposite sides of the house, letting cooler night air push the hot air out. Attic fans were another lifesaver. Installed high in the house, they pulled hot air upward and out, creating a steady draft through every room. The hum of an attic fan became as familiar as crickets on a summer night. It was noisy, yes, but it made sleeping bearable. This architectural design reminds us just how much thought went into staying cool in an era when comfort had to be engineered by nature. 10. Public pools and swimming holes. When the heat became unbearable, people flocked to public pools, rivers, and swimming holes. Cities built massive public pools as gathering places where thousands of families cooled off together. Meanwhile, in rural areas, kids jumped into lakes, ponds, and creeks, sometimes with nothing more than a rope swing for fun. These spaces weren't just about cooling down, they were about community. Families packed picnic baskets, kids learned to swim, and neighbors became friends. For many, the memory of diving into cold water on a blistering summer day still brings a smile. Public pools and swimming holes were more than a luxury, they were lifelines. 11. The power of shade. In a time before air conditioning, shade was priceless. Families built wide porches, hung awnings, and planted trees for relief. Grandparents rocked on shady verandas, children played beneath big oak trees, and neighbors gathered where the air felt just a little less heavy. Shade became a lifestyle. Afternoons slowed down as families sat on the porch with cold drinks, fanning themselves while swapping stories. Even in cities, kids searched for shade between tall buildings, escaping the sun wherever they could. Something as simple as sitting beneath a tree offered peace in the middle of summer's battle with the heat. Surviving the summer heat before air conditioning wasn't easy, but it gave people resourcefulness, resilience, and traditions we still remember today. From sleeping porches to cold suppers, each method was a small act of ingenuity that made life just a little more bearable. It may not have been comfortable, but it was unforgettable. And maybe, just maybe, we've lost something in the ease of modern air conditioning, the creativity, the community, and the slower rhythm of summer days. What about you? Did your parents or grandparents talk about how they stayed cool? Maybe you even remember some of these tricks yourself. Share your memories in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us again on our next journey back into America's past.